is this a problem of urban design? I went back and I said, it's not a problem. The problem is the quality of the space. If we look after only the shelter, we've forgotten the other bit, which is, what is the street? What is the territory that gives us all the opportunity to meet? I think this is the other big crisis of our time.
네, 안녕하세요, 왓슨 여러분. 오늘은 저희 진짜 귀한 손님을 모셨습니다. 정말 제가 개인적으로 되게 존경하는 건축가이고, 제가 항상 여러분들에게 얘기했듯이 서울에서 꼭 봐야 되는 건물 하나를 꼽는다면은 아모레퍼시픽 사옥을 봐라, 그렇게 말씀드렸잖아요. 그 디자인하신 데이비드 치퍼필드 건축가께서 오셨고요. 요번에 또 프리츠커 프라이즈를 받으셨거든요. 그래서 여러 가지 겸사겸사해서 서울을 방문하셨습니다. 영광스럽게도 저희 이 셜록 홈즈 촬영하는 스튜디오까지 방문하셨습니다. Okay, welcome. It's an honor to have you here. This studio is my YouTube channel, so it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much.
So I was so surprised that when I heard the news that you come visit us to have a conversation, so I was so honored and I'm so happy.
Thank you.
So welcome. So we're gonna talk about your architecture philosophy and the more recent news. We're always talking about the role of architecture to unify the people in the society. And I remember that when you were the director of the Venice Biennale, the theme was the common ground, isn't it? Your definition of the common ground is more like unify the people. Nowadays, we spend more time in online space. The people are, because of the algorithm, the social polarization is getting severe. So I think the role of the architecture is getting more important than ever. So can you?
I mean, the role of the physical world in face of the virtual world.
Yes.
Yeah, I think as architects, we obviously believe in the importance of the physical world. We believe in the importance of architecture. I would say in my career, which is now 40 years nearly, when I left architecture school, I was trained by a generation of architects, post-war architects, who had the expectation architects were really social consultants. They worked on urban planning, they worked on universities, they worked on housing, they worked for the public good and in a way politically supported. And now our priorities, we work for the private sector, we work for investment. And our cities are being designed mostly by the pressures of investment. Therefore, I think it's really important. And now with issues of environmental sustainability and social inequality, I think we have to refocus responsibilities back to what we believe in, which is that architecture can somehow make our lives better.
So that's why nowadays you're more focusing on some nonprofit foundation and the research center in Santiago.
I think within conventional practice, we all have to reconsider priorities. We have to work with our clients to establish other targets and criteria. Certainly in terms of sustainability, these issues are not easy, but they need to be defined. I think every time we do a project, we now have to think much more hard about what materials we use, where they come from, what the embedded CO2 quantities are, and also how the building will perform energetically going forward. So that's an environmental issue. But I think at the same time, I think we have to think what architecture gives back in environment, but also in a social way. And it's our role as architects to promote and to support and to encourage clients in this way.
Do you have some special trick to convince the client that most of the times the client doesn't want to spend any money on the social issues? So how do you convince the client?
Well, I've been very lucky because so many of my projects have been museums and things like that. So a museum by definition is a public offer. But you're absolutely right. How can you persuade an office client that their project is a public project? We are more and more used to the idea we have a client and the client is the one that pays us. But we have a more complex client relationship than that in a way. The first client is the one that pays us, but the second client are the people who are using the building. Yeah. But they don't necessarily attend all the meetings where decisions are made. Yeah. So they can only attend in the back of our heads, in a way. We also have the client who is not working in the building, but passing the building every day. Our client is the other citizens who have to experience the building. So we have to mix these client responsibilities, even if we have one dominant client. But some clients, you mentioned Amoreperfic, when we're lucky enough to have a client like this, then the discussion is easy because this project began with a client who wanted to make the headquarter building a community. He was very concerned for the welfare of the staff, and therefore it was for us a fantastic collaboration to try to work with him and think, how can we make an office building more than an office building?
Yeah, you talk about the Amoreperfic headquarters. So when I look at the building, the courtyard in the center of the headquarter building is really a fantastic idea. So people can look at each other and also gathers at the fifth floor Amore Garden or other gardens in the building.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about the stories about how you designed this building?
Well, the competition was for towers.
Yeah.
And we took a risk.
Yeah, it's a huge risk, yeah.
Yeah, it's a risk in a competition because if you refuse the rules, then it's very often the client will say they didn't respect my rule. But I refused the rule because I thought I could understand the sort of philosophical background to Chairman So's idea of a company was about community, about the company being a community, about people working together and sharing things. And I argued that a tower doesn't give you the possibility. So we squashed the tower into a box, and therefore you can create collective spaces. So instead of the symbolism of the tower, oh look, there is Amoreperfic, then it should be more experiential. You should be able to, the building shouldn't only be an object, it should be also a space.
Sure.
And through the space, you might represent the community of the company. And Mr. So understood this from the beginning, and so he accepted the rejection of the tower concept. But then also, the second one is, can this building relate outwards to the city? So could we create horizontal connections to the surrounding area? And that was the other concern in the project. And again, I think these big windows give a sort of idea of building has some generosity to the public. And then, of course, the ground floor being a public.
Yeah.
Which, of course, creates certain organizational security issues. You know, we have to have 4 elevators, because normally you have one elevator core in the middle, and if you want to have transparency, then you have to put the elevator cores in a different place. That makes the security a bit more complicated for the company to organize. But, you know, again, Mr. So, Chairman So, was interested in these concepts in a way that allowed us to question conventional office planning.
So you talk about a lot of things about the role of architecture for the society, and I know you visited Seoul quite often for the project. So can you tell us your suggestion that how do we improve the Seoul environment?
Well, I think Seoul has the same problems of all contemporary cities. The decisions which create the city are often ones which are not close necessarily or not engaging the citizen. And that's a sort of missing dimension in the contemporary city, I think. So the city is a consequence of actions, of individual actions. But the scale of these actions now puts us as humans in a slightly strange individual position. And I think this is, of course, what technology is doing to us. I mean, we have a nostalgia still, because although the world has changed a lot and our world has changed so much, as human beings, we still have a nostalgia for things which we understand. So if we go to a small wooden house, we understand everything. We can see how the house is made. It feels charming to us because we can understand it. It makes sense to us. When we stand outside of 80-story tower, we don't understand it. I don't understand it. I mean, sometimes I can't even understand how can it not fall over.
Yeah.
So we are more and more detached from the world we live in. So which would be fine if our minds changed in the same way, but they don't. We still have nostalgia, we still have a desire. And now, in order to confirm this distance of understanding, we've realized that we're also damaging the planet in a way. So our concept of progress, which I think is the biggest question for us. I grew up thinking that technology always is good. It got better, we had Beatles, we had record players, then we had fashion, and then, we had cars, fast, the world got better. always. Progress
Yes.
was unquestionable. Now we hit a wall
Yes.
because we realize all of this progress created another problem. And now we have to unprogress somehow, or we have to compensate.
Yeah.
We have to mend or pay for or try to resolve. So that's quite a big shift in our mind. And then the question is, where does that put architecture?
So that's something you want to try and apply to the Santiago, so to make a better cities. My
Yeah.
question is, why is it Santiago?
Good question. So the first issue for, I think, all architects now, we are in a sort of crisis in a ways that we're having to learn, like all of us, human beings. What does the sustainability crisis, environmental crisis mean for us individually? Professionally, we also have to learn. In what way should we change our habits? And in a conventional commercial office, I have a design office with high ambitions, but still, it's a commercial office. So we have to live within the general rules of commercial transaction. So then I decided, because of my position I am in my career now, I now can be a little bit more comfortable. I can use my reputation, let's say.
Yeah.
So Santiago project is where we started in a completely different way. So in Santiago, I was invited, the regional president asked me 7 years ago, can't I help a little bit on planning? Why do they build in that region, which is so beautiful in nature? They build horrible buildings, they develop the towns in a horrible way. So I said I would try and help. We invented a different type of office, which is, I guess, a bit more like a doctor. We try to go out and see how we can improve things. So we're not waiting for a commission. We see through our own experience, a small town is destroyed by the road. The road in the center of the town used to be a social road, and over 30 years, it becomes a traffic road. So the cars are going 50 kilometers. The church is one side, the village is the other, the school is this side, the port is this side, the playground is this side. Old ladies can't cross, and the identity is lost. So then, is this a problem of urban design? And we generate projects. We started to realize, of course, all architects know this, the city is defined as much by the space between buildings as by the buildings. So when the president said, can you help us improve the quality of the architecture? I went back and I said, it's not a problem. The problem is the quality of the space. No one is responsible for this. And yet this is where the citizen has most, because, we have two requirements as humans, from the city or the village or the town. One is shelter and protection. And then we want community. We want to belong to something more. So the street is a common place.
Sure, yeah.
It's a common ground, the street or the square. And therefore, if we look after only the shelter, we've forgotten the other bit, which is, what is the street? I don't just mean the street, but what is the territory that gives us all the opportunity to meet? And not just to meet other rich people or other people in our own situation, because the restaurant is also a common ground. The energy of a city is based on diversity. And I think this is the other big crisis of our time. Internet and social media somehow pushing us into tribes and into separate things. And we could say the blame is on social media, the blame is on the virtual world. But we could also say maybe the blame is on the physical world for not offering enough opportunity to be together.
So for me, it's the same reason we have to improve the offline public spaces. So to make it more useful, instead of just passing by street, you have to stay there, like a park. So to me, the bench is really important issue. So I have a campaign to more benches in Seoul.
The bench in public space is a sort of symbol.
Yeah.
And it's a symbol of humanizing the public space. It's sort of saying, this isn't just a passage, it's a place to sit. It's a sort of, so it gives this very nice sense of civic ownership. And I think that's why, as architects, we like the bench.
Okay, as a younger generation architect compared to you, I want to ask this question. Do you have any difficult time or period when you have a career, most difficult season, what you learn, or how do you overcome that difficult season?
Good question. It's always difficult, and I suppose you can never be that sure, both from an intellectual and from a financial position. You know, I think doubt and anxiety is part of designing. The difficulty is there is no clear path. I mean, to be an architect, there's 100 things. I mean, there's many. And to make your own office, you're inventing yourself. You're inventing yourself in relation to others. And that's a very fragile idea, I think. And that's why a little bit I feel like it's not the future. I think the profession has to become a more collaborative one. I think we have to become more participatory. The difficulty is we shouldn't ever give up the importance of architecture itself. Making good decisions about design should not be abandoned because we become more interested in social or environmental concerns. We still have to use architecture as our tool. I don't know what that is, but I think the challenges in future are not going to be so much about building an iconic museum somewhere and having a monograph. I think if I was a young architect, I wouldn't want to go through all of that again. I think for a younger generation, the environmental crisis gives a mandate and a legitimacy to our profession, which could be very important. I notice, for instance, you know, in order for us in Galicia to talk about urban issues, we have to talk about cars, we have to talk about roads and parking, and then we have to talk about public transportation. I'm not really interested in cars. I'm not interested in roads, but I'm interested in towns.
Yeah.
10 years ago, if I complained about parking and cars, it would be an architect complaining about parking and cars. Now, I can put that complaint in a bigger discussion about environment, about clean air, about the quality of life, the quality of our streets. And politicians can't refuse this, because no politician anymore can ignore the issue of environment. In fact, they are having to move in this area. So this becomes a really interesting thing, is that we have much more legitimacy as architects and planners to complain about issues and to demand these things. I mean, I don't know about Korea, but in Britain, we have a huge housing crisis. I can't remember how many, a few million, who are in temporary housing. This is a rich country. It's not a third world country. We're not building affordable housing. The politicians didn't want to touch this for many years. But at the same time, architects are not participating in this discussion because they've been so isolated for so long. They're waiting for the politicians to decide what to do. But we should be bringing the issues up and making it more uncomfortable and coming with ideas and saying this is how we should be doing it. And I think the next generation has to have the power and the confidence to demand more, to become more activist. This could be an exciting period for a young generation.
All right. Thank you for a great answer. Okay, for the last, we have more than 1 million viewers in the YouTube channel. So do you have anything to say to these viewers?
Oh my gosh. No, I would say, I mean, I presume that a lot of your viewers are not architects as well. I mean, I imagine it's a general. I think it's important that people don't imagine that the responsibility of architecture is only architects. We are all responsible for demanding the world we live in. And we know as architects, actually on our own, we can't do very much. We need clients to employ us, we need administrations to approve us, and we need builders to build it, and we need the general public to like it.
Yes.
We are totally dependent on others. And public opinion and public attitudes can be really important on this. I think quality of life begins with the apartment you live in and the street that you walk your children to school in. You know, I mean, I've learned from Galicia that, which has a very low per capita GDP, but a very high quality of life. And that's based on environment. It's not based on wealth. And the Anglo-Saxon model, to be happy, you have to have money. I think we're learning that you need good schools, good infrastructure, good transportation, good housing, good environment. That's your life. That's quality of life. And maybe that's the progress that we should be seeking.
I'm sure that the viewers of this channel, they are the most energetic people in our society to make a progress and then demand more, especially to the politicians. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your great wisdom about architecture.
Thank you very much.
네, 그러면 왓슨 여러분, 오늘 저 데이비드 치퍼필드 모셔가지고 많은 이야기 나눠봤는데요. 더 많은 그 건물들을 좀 보시면 더 좋을 것 같습니다. 아모레 사옥도 한번 가보시고, 그리고 인터넷 치시면은 되게 좋은 작품들이 되게 많거든요. 그런 것들은 제가 차차 더 설명을 이 채널을 통해서 드릴 기회가 있을 것 같습니다. 그래서 네, 오늘 이렇게 좋은 시간 보내게 해주신 데이비드 치퍼필드에게 다시 한번 감사드리면서 오늘 마치도록 하겠습니다.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.